Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, your host, and this podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders make a bigger impact with insights, tips, and lessons learned from nonprofit leaders and experts. Having been an executive director, a board member, and now a consultant and coach, I truly understand the challenges you face. And that's why I'm here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, so you can make a bigger impact without the burnout. And so is our sponsor, DonorBox. DonorBox isn't just a suite of helpful fundraising tools, it's a partner that helps you raise more money and supports you in retaining your donors. I love their forward-thinking approach. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. And don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you'll get bite-sized, actionable tips just for nonprofit leaders like you, delivered weekly to your inbox. Sign up at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. Guest for this episode is Diane Strand, who is an award-winning entrepreneur, marketer, and speaker who helps creatives turn their passions into profitable businesses. She is the founder of JDS Productions, a seven-figure media company, and co-founder of JDS Creative Academy, a nonprofit creating career pathways in the arts for youth and special needs students. Welcome, Diane. It's such a pleasure to have you. Before we dive into things, marketing and nonprofit leadership, would you just tell us a little more about yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. It's a privilege to be here. And, to share a little bit about myself, I always love, there's a quote by Steve Jobs that says, you can't connect your dots looking forward. You have to look back and trust that they connect in the future. And so when I really started putting this practice into place, I realized my dots showed up really, really early in life. And it really does say a lot to exactly where I am and what I'm doing today. In second grade, I was an undiagnosed dyslexic little girl who just wanted to play Betsy Ross in the school play. And everybody told me that maybe I should try something different. And I didn't want to embarrass myself because I couldn't read.
Yep.
And, that's when city showed up as well in my life. And if you tell me I can't or shouldn't, I'm like, well, watch me. And I somehow figured out how to at least audition. And I got the part of Betsy Ross in the school play. And the arts and being a part of the theater kept me connected all through school, challenges and all, and always set me back to my center. And today it really is my purpose, my passion, and why I do what I do and how it really does the arts impact life and business. And my other dot really showed up in second grade too. There was a fundraising contest, and whoever sold the most candy in the school would win this 19-inch black and white TV. Well, okay, I just dated myself and told you how old I am there a little bit, but I wanted that black and white TV for my bedroom, and so I set out to sell the most candy in my school. This was a K through 8 school. I was a little second grader, and I went to work, enlisted mostly my parents' help, but I went every day after school. I went door to door. I went business park to business park in my little city, and I sold the most candy, and I won that TV. Well, I do a lot of fundraising. I still work in television today. I'm a businesswoman. I love the arts. So that kind of tells you a little bit about who I am and what I do and, how my personal intersects with my professional. But there's lots of stories there, to go on through, but the arts are truly the through line.
Yeah, I love that. Great, wonderful story. And, I think the arts are such a powerful part of how we use our brain. And my ex-husband is an artist who's also dyslexic, and he's very visually oriented. Like, it's a real strength for him, as is my son, is also dyslexic. And hopefully things they've gotten better. I think there's more access to learning how to read if you're dyslexic. However, it's still, I think, a real challenge, especially for the younger kids, to maintain that self-confidence. I felt, I made a decision when my son was young to send him to a school that didn't really have like grades or classes or anything, and he did not learn how to read. However, he maintained his confidence. I remember him saying, like, as his other friends had all learned how to read, and I remember him saying to his friends online during the pandemic, like, you have to read that to me because I'm dyslexic and I can't read." He was just, like, proud of it, and I was like, "Yes." And then later that year, he was like, "Oh, I'd like to learn how to read," and then we got him into a reading intervention program, and he learned how to read very quickly, but maintaining that sense of pride and confidence first and foremost was really important to me, and at this point it's paid off. Now he's 13 and telling me, "Well, mom, I'm going to go to MIT and I got to do all the things to be ready to go to MIT," because he's really into science, but he's got that confidence. I'm sure you do that for the youth in your programs. So
Absolutely.
tell us a little bit about JDS Creative Academy. Like, size it up for us, for other nonprofit leaders. Like, what's your main mission? What do you do? How big is it? How many staff do you have? Roughly, what's your operating budget? So we got that picture in mind.
Well, JDS Creative Academy is a nonprofit 501(c)(3). We've been around, we're in our 13th year now. And we run an operating budget of over $1 million, and we have anywhere from 14 to 16 staff members that are on. We have lots of interns and externs and different programs. We serve youth, teens, and adults, mainstream and special needs. We have classes in musical theater, filmmaking, script writing, backstage production, and we have a Title 17 day program for neurodiverse adults to learn video production and multimedia so that it's a workforce training program so that they can learn soft skills and technical skills to be able to enter into the workforce. And we have placed 13 specifically into entertainment, video related editing, social media type of jobs in an internship. Some have been hired. Some have gone on to other kinds of employment at other places through DOR, or even just utilizing the skills that we've taught them, but turning them in a different trajectory. We've also had some that have gone on to higher ed and done different things. And then we've had some that are still here in program that, been here for 8 years in our program and producing great video. They're not necessarily employed, but they've gone through different internships and skill level training, and, they come and it gives them community and a place to come, and they do work on shows. We produce out of our nonprofit 3 TV shows, a radio show, and a podcast. We do 3 big, huge theatrical productions. We're currently doing Guys and Dolls, where we have a summer camp program. We do fundraising events, but every event that we do has another purpose to it, not just let's throw a gala and raise money. We have a big, huge event. I don't know when this is airing, but in April every year we have a big, huge event. It's called DigiFest. And it's in its 10th year, and it's a 3-day, so much more than a film festival. And it's coming up. It's April 24th, 25th, and 26th of 2026. And it's where we bring Hollywood to Temecula. And it is a conference, a networking event, a festival. It's entertainment, it's food, it's inspiration. It's meeting people that you're like, wow, I got to meet that person, right? That an actor, a musician, someone that I love and watch on TV or in the films or listen to, on my headsets and radio. And you now get to meet them and socialize there amongst the crowd. So it's a place to be, it's a room to be in. But it's also a way, it starts as a competition. It's for students, it's for emerging professionals, it's for industry professionals to all connect and collaborate and bring it back to that human level. We do haunted studios for fundraisers, so that's what we do at the nonprofit, and how we engage. And then we have a lot of great sponsors and corporate, and our city sponsors us. We just won an award from our third district supervisor for Riverside County for being a nonprofit organization of the year for our county. So it's really, it's great to do what we do, impact so many, as well as get to be creative and have fun. We've launched over 100 careers. So that's a little bit about what we do here at JDS Creative Academy.
So many rich pieces in there. Let me start, so many directions I could go in. Let me start by, you do serve a neurodivergent community. I know I spent years before I became a consultant and before I became a marketing agency. I worked primarily in organizations for youth and young adults with developmental disabilities. And I learned so many, like, actual communication and people skills from that space. Turns out, folks, providing great education and great communication for people with developmental disabilities is actually really good skills for leadership. I'm imagining you've experienced some of the same, and I'm wondering what lessons you have learned.
Well, in the teaching and education space, the lessons that I really bring to that in the program that we designed is hands-on, touching, being able to do it, practice with it. That's, especially for someone who is dyslexic. I can't just read instructions and it comprehends super easy, maybe after the fifth time I've read them, but it's so much easier if I can dot, 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 and point and do and touch and make happen and then hear it. So that's a lot of the programs that, we have designed. And, I always say leadership doesn't get easier. It just becomes more public. But, so I love today that I get to make dreams come true. And that's what I really provide, is a little bit of hope. And I just look to help one person every day and then create that ripple effect. I'm an acronym girl. So, dream, you want a dream to become a reality. You need direction. You need to realize the work that it's going to take and that everything that it's going to take to go into it. You need to evaluate it. You need to engineer it. You need to figure it out, reverse engineer it. Where do you want to be and what are the things you need to do today if this is where you want to be tomorrow or 6 months from now or a year from now? You got to take action, and you have to have accountability to yourself, to other people. You need that why, that purpose. And then you get the momentum of the dream to turn it into a reality. And, what I have found is, you got to just keep stepping outside your comfort zone. And as you push yourself more and more, and those are the tools of the arts. I'm not sharing anything that I didn't learn by being a theater kid,
Yeah.
by working backstage. I always tell, businesses are like, yeah, on the arts, foo-foo. I'm like, no, it's really not that. Businesses need more creativity and creatives need a little bit more business. You look at the book over my shoulder, it's called Show Business. My husband's the show and I'm the business. And we're the yin and the yang. We've been doing this for 23 years. And he is, not to say he's not business, but yet, and not to say I'm not show, but we can balance. But you have to have both. You have to find that creative juice. As a marketer, it's how we market, it's how we communicate, it's how we learn and educate, is through the arts. And when I'm not trying to turn everyone into a Picasso. That's not the point, but the things that you will be able to do with, the paintbrush, the Karate Kid. Go back to thinking about that. There is a reason and a rhyme, and how you start to build that mindset and that strength to do things you've never done before. Get up on a stage and go do a monologue. Doesn't mean you have to go perform in a play, right? But get up and do a presentation, step outside your comfort zone, be visible. That's how your business is going to grow, whether it's a for-profit or a nonprofit. You need visibility. You need to be able to speak and talk and communicate. And those are all skills from the creative arts.
Yeah. I love that. And I think, you've highlighted like focus. And so often I find for nonprofit leaders who are like attending to too many different things, so often it's too many, getting that focus, choosing to focus is that piece that's outside of their comfort zone, right? And oh, having it, but that focus, as you just described, I see it again and again, it leads to momentum. And man, you can't achieve a nonprofit style big vision pushing that boulder up by yourself. You've got to get momentum or you're not going to achieve anything, big. You might achieve a local club or a small program, but you're not going to scale if you don't gain momentum. It's critical, I think.
That's why we need community,
Yeah.
because you can't do it alone, and especially in the nonprofit space. Interesting enough, with my chamber, I've been fortunate enough to win Nonprofit of the Year, and we've also won Business of the Year. And I was we won Nonprofit of the Year before we ever won Business of the Year. I've been an entrepreneur for 23 years and a nonprofit founder for only 12 years. But interesting enough that, when I was passing the torch and presenting, there is sure, in the nonprofit world, we have challenges, huge challenges, but they are collective challenges that we face together. As entrepreneurs, that's an entrepreneurial dream, and that's my husband and I, yes, pushing the rock uphill in that sense, but, those are, we don't take sick days. We don't take, I don't, I hit the pillow hard, but don't always sleep because I'm worried about what tomorrow brings. As a nonprofit founder, I thankfully, we have 14 to 16 employees, so I could share the load a little bit there. And you have the support. It's a collective mission. I can raise a little bit. I mean, maybe not year one. I couldn't say, hey, come help me. I'm drowning over here. I had to prove myself as a nonprofit that serves. But now, 12 years into being a nonprofit, I can make a phone call. Right today, our city is a big sponsor of us. We're putting on our big festival and trying to get our alcohol and beverage control license, right, and make all the little logistic things work. And the Riverside County Sheriff's wanted to charge me $102, saying it was a city fee, not a sheriff's fee. And so I had to call the city and say, you guys are sponsors. Can you waive this fee? So would they have done that maybe year one? No. But here we are 12 years later. They're a big sponsor. They contribute and they help. But I can pick up the phone and make a phone call now. It's a community effort. This is something for the community that we're doing. I love that about a nonprofit space, but it's a very different, our challenges are still real. We still have them, but there is a community to push that boulder uphill.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, I'm sure I have two questions, but I want to ask the less common question first. But the more common question, which I'll ask you second, is what lessons from your for-profit business do you apply to your nonprofit? But the question that doesn't get asked that I want to ask you first is what lessons from your nonprofit have you perhaps applied to your for-profit business?
Service. And then the other answer is service. It really is the same answer. The more you serve, the more you get. And also, the lessons that I really learned that through the nonprofit space. It changed a lot of my business mentality where I was always chasing every dollar, trying to figure it out as a for-profit, right? And as a nonprofit, realizing that I don't get to save the profits and it's not mine, it allowed me to realize how to build wealth for the organization, not necessarily and stop worrying about the cash flow. And then when I started putting that into my business and I started learning to focus more about building wealth for my family and my business and not worrying about the cash flow, my business grew as well too. And so it really is, serve. And that's how I started really getting into that, and so bringing those back and forth, they really work together. And it's just as simple as that. And I think I learned that from the nonprofit, which then made my business stronger. And the one thing though that I do bring into the nonprofit from my business is I run the nonprofit like a business.
What does
You
that
know,
mean
I
to
it,
you? Spell that out, because that gets thrown around, and I love to, like,
right.
dive in. So what are the pieces that are critical in that?
Well, it still doesn't mean that I'm not looking for the best deal. It still does not mean that just because I'm a nonprofit that, I can not be a good steward of the money because I need to be a good steward of the money, just like it is mine, even though it isn't mine. I know when I get to the end and whatever's left, I can do really great things, that don't involve having to put shoes on my kids' feet, right? And I can still do really good things with it. So I run it like a business. I think about it like a business, the employees that, while I realize they go above and beyond, I can go above and beyond for them as an employer,
Mhm.
but yet they have to keep in mind that they're here for the betterment of the nonprofit. And, so I think about it as a business. You can't just be late or, say you were here 15 minutes before you were here 15 minutes just because, and be running it like a business, still going through the steps that you would in getting 3 quotes and looking at the bottom line and investing smart and buying tools. If there are tools to work smarter, not harder, invest in them for
Yeah.
your nonprofit.
Yeah.
Um, so it can, setting up the processes and the procedures. When we first started, we were running a little bit by the seat of our pants, and we had to come back and rail that in because it is something that is, I want to hand off. It's the legacy piece, I guess you could say, that will go on beyond my production company. Because even if I was to sell my for profit, I know that still 90% is Scott and I coming into that for profit and going into every project, but building the nonprofit as a business that has a legacy side to it that's going to go on, it needs to be able to have structure and process and procedure. It's even more of a business than probably my for profit is a business, right? Because that's still a mom and pop business with only 2 employees, right? Not 14 employees. So,
Yeah. I wanna highlight that because so often, like, in the outside world, when I tell people I work with nonprofits, they think small. And I'm like, I'm talking about multi-million dollar budgets here, right? Like, the most of my clients, when I talk to other business coaches, they are probably way bigger than your clients. They have C-suites, right? Like, and certainly there are many small nonprofits, but even the smallest nonprofit on day one has a board of directors, right? So that's 3 people, probably plus a CEO. Sometimes a new nonprofit, the CEO is one of the board members, right? But that is already much bigger than a new for-profit business. And I love the piece that you brought up about that, like, legacy business. Like, every nonprofit has to be built like a for-profit that's intending to be passing on or selling itself, right? It has to not be dependent on any one person. It has to have systems and processes and services that can go on past the founder. That I love that lesson. And then the service, back and forth. And I've been asking myself this question around what nonprofits offer for profits because I've always said nonprofits are businesses, But as a business, their business model is more complicated because they usually have the fundraising piece plus an offer or service or product piece that they're delivering. So they have more going on from day one and they have more people involved, right? There's that community element. And I would love, just to put it out into the world, I would love the for-profit space to look at nonprofits and think, wow, we have a lot to learn from them instead of the other way around. Like they don't really know what they're doing. And again, I've seen for-profit people come into nonprofits and they're like, we know how to run a business. We're going to fix this all up. And very quickly they're like, oh my God, we have no idea how to handle all this complexity. And they're just in that like vortex of not knowing what to do. How do you feel about that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you do have to it's very regulated running a nonprofit. I mean, you have to, cross your T's, dot your I's. You have to be able to account for your dollars and your pennies and your cents and where the money is coming from, where the money is going. Because if we get a grant in that is for this project, but we get a grant in that's for a different project, and how to keep that. I love that. That's where I use a lot of my production background in that because, as a production company, we have several different projects and each project has a budget that goes with it and costs associated with it to break down. And that's been able to help us when we get a grant for running this theater project. And then I have a grant for running this part of our workforce development project. And, it all goes into one bank account, but on books, I have to keep it very clear,
Right.
where the money is and where
I'm sure you'd have to do
I
nothing
want
like that
to
complicated in your
take
for-profit
accounts.
business. Yeah. And most, the only situation where I've heard like for-profits who have to do that level of bookkeeping complexity are like financial funds who have to track like what's going on for each client in each account. Like giant companies like Merrill Lynch have accounting departments that do complex financial tracking the way, almost any nonprofit that has, more than one grant or even just one grant, any restricted funding all of a sudden has this heavy load and it costs more. And so often I don't think nonprofits are really, elevating or recognizing or accounting for the cost of the accounting even. But I bet you see that between the two
Well,
businesses.
that's the hardest part. You get a grant, and if you get a grant for, $50,000 or $500,000, you have so much administration that goes along with that, but usually that administration is not part of the grant money.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's not worth as much. It is not, a $50,000 grant doesn't give you $50,000 worth of money. It gives you, minus the expenses and all the headache, like restricted money. I just always remind people is not worth a restricted dollar is not worth an unrestricted dollar. It's significantly less in value.
But the best thing is, as a nonprofit founder, is I've been able to turn $1 into $3.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that because I've heard too many for-profits be like, well, why don't those nonprofits just go and like make money kind of doing a businessy thing? And first of all, it doesn't really work like that because it get taxed. But second of all, fundraising as a business model inside of nonprofits is extremely profitable, right? You can easily turn $1 into $3 or $4. Or I know if those folks who get really into like major gifts and planned giving, they can turn $1 into $50. And man, if a for-profit company heard that, they would be like, oh my God, I want to turn $1 into $50. That's like mind blowing to them. And so whenever folks in the outside world ask me like, how can we make more nonprofits like sustainable financially? I'm like, fund their fundraising department, like if you want to donate to a nonprofit and have it really make an impact, forget giving it to the programming, give it to the fundraising department because they can turn your money and easily get a 3x, a 4x ROI, and then they can just cycle it through again and again indefinitely, and you can make a much bigger impact than just your dollar amount doing that. And so I'm sharing that because that's another thing. Like, I'm on the mission to change that thinking that giving just to programming is a good thing. To me, that's like a constricting thing. I don't believe in restricting money for donations. I think that doesn't help us. But if I were to restrict my donation, if I had to do it, I'd say you can only spend it on fundraising because that's where I'm going to get the return on investment from my donation.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. So, Diane, before we wrap up, I'd love to ask you what kind of folks should be reaching out if they want to learn more from your expertise or want to get involved, if they're in your area, who should be reaching out, and what's the best way for them to do that?
I would say anybody who loves the arts or loves creativity, definitely reach out. I love to connect with people, whether that is you want to come sew and help us backstage and come be a part of what, youth, teens, and adults are doing creatively, whether you may be a business out there that wants to hire adults with developmental disabilities to do your video production, social media, or editing. They can work remotely. They can work, be here and work for you remotely. So maybe you have a business. That would be a great way to help us and support us. Donations are always welcome, but there are lots of ways to donate that don't even cost money. Follow us on social media. Share our content on social media. We have events and plays and programs and camps and classes. If you're in the area, come be a part of it. If you are not in the area, we have a lot of virtual programs. We do script writing virtual. I'm a visibility coach. We are trying to move the arts across America. So if you want to, we are going to Kenya. So we are taking arts packages to Kenya. You want to be a part of that and sponsor that. There are so many ways to get involved. You can find us all over social media. You can find me personally, say hello at Diane. You can search us at #JDSFamily. You can find our event DigiFest. You can find our TV show, Spirit of Innovation, Arts Across America. Look up JDS. We come up pretty quickly between the for-profit and the nonprofit. You're going to reach out to me, and I'll make sure that you get credit for helping and serving and being a part of our mission.
Well, thank you so much, Diane. And thank you out there for listening and everything you do to make our communities better. You can help this podcast by liking it and leaving a review wherever you listen to it. That helps the algorithm deliver it to more people who can benefit. And or share this or another episode you found helpful with a friend or colleague who is running a nonprofit. And until next time, I wish you all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.